Welcome to the Success Blueprint, strategies to build a life and business you love. This is your go-to podcast for success in both life and business. I'm your host, Daniel Craig Johnson, and as a seasoned life and business coach with 15 years of experience, I will be sharing powerful stories, practical tips, and valuable insights on personal development, leadership, entrepreneurship, productivity, motivation, and more. Join me every week for the Success Blueprint, strategies for building a life and business you love. Let's ignite your success. It is Saturday morning here in Johannesburg. It's the Success Blueprint. We've been waiting for this episode. Today we got Joanne Holbrook on the podcast. We've been excited about that, and we had 1 day delay because of the time difference, 12 hours. So here it is Saturday morning in Hawaii. It is Saturday evening, and we got Joe here. Joanne is a mother of two and spouse of a United States Army officer. She has raised her family in 5 countries and multiple US states. Born in South Africa under the controlling apartheid government, she yearned for better understanding of cultures outside her homeland. World travels that come with a military lifestyle and her desire to learn have given her multicultural perspectives she has successfully applied to her own parenting. Your Passport to Parenting is her very first book. Good morning, Joe.
Good evening, actually.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Good. I'm glad we could do this. This is going to be fun.
Yes, I'm so excited, and it was a bit of a confusion with the time difference, but we got it on. We were supposed to launch the episode yesterday, but it doesn't matter. 1 day later is also good. I'm very excited to have you, and I've really been looking forward to the podcast and to this topic. I've read your introduction, but I would like you to tell us a couple of words about you, about your background, and how you became to write the Passport for Parenting. Just give us a bit of a rundown on you.
So like you heard, I was a performing arts teacher, and really I'm a complete accidental author. I had no dreams to be an author. I had nothing like that. And I got married to a US Army guy, and started living around the world. And, by the time my children were sort of 12, I had raised my children on 4 continents, in 5 countries, and in 5 US states. And, with that comes so many lessons. And at the beginning of this journey of moving country every 24 months, I always felt like I was at a loss. I was always the mom that was late, that was behind, that couldn't keep up with whatever culture I was living in. When you're living in England or Germany or Australia, all the other moms who were local seemed to just get it, obviously, because it was their culture. And instead of complaining about it, I decided one day that I was going to embrace it, and I was going to find parents from around the world that could help me be a better mom, not always feel like I'm behind, and really leaning on other cultures. And by doing that, I accidentally found gems. I found parents, cultures, every single thing that you can imagine. And I got privy to people that other people in the world don't have privy to. And I got to really dig deep into people and ask them what made their parenting journey great, or how were they brought up. And I became a researcher and a storyteller. I always tell people that is mainly what I do. And slowly, I started writing all these lessons down from all over the world. When we traveled, I would make sure that I found people to interview. Wherever we went, whether I was on a plane, whether I was on a train, I would literally sit next to someone and find people. And I started sharing these stories with my friends, and they were like, oh my gosh, you should write this down. Slowly, I met a publisher and then a coach, and they were like, it's not been done before, let's do it. And 9 months later, I held a book, and the pandemic hit, and my launch got canceled and all of that. It was the perfect time for the parents during the pandemic to have such a book. And then it got 3 book awards, and it got translated into multiple languages. And every day, I just can't believe how I got here.
Yes, that's super exciting. But, I think through the pandemic, everyone has been thrown left and right and into different directions. And as scary as the pandemic was, and as much as happened on both sides of the scale, negative and positive, it also came with many opportunities and many opportunities for a person to grow and to really come up with new ideas or new things that are happening in life. And I think the important thing was really to be resilient. And who would I talk to better than to you about resilience? I'm sure that in terms of your moves and how the family progressed and all your travels and all over the world, that comes with the requirement for a huge portion of resilience. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think that, even if you don't come from that sort of environment, it's very easy to build resilience when you're always putting your children in uncomfortable positions. It's very hard to build your children's resilience when you don't have those opportunities. So, but, those people, they can find them still. You can still build resilience in a safe environment, without having to move across the world or, throw your kids into different schools every 20 months or so. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think really, of course, when you live in an environment where you don't have to move and everything, I guess it's a different exercise to build resilience for your family, or especially for your kids when you live in stable circumstances. Everything is always right. Everything is always the same. So then you need to really focus on building that resilience, because I think in life generally, it's something that people sometimes lack, and that makes them struggle more in life, makes them more anxious, makes them more depressed, because they don't have that resilience, because they maybe grew up in a totally normal, stable environment. And that sometimes, of course, that's a good thing. But in terms of resilience, it can also sometimes come to the downfall when you have no one that actually teaches you, or no environment that teaches you how to be more resilient. Is that correct?
When I lived in Germany was actually the time the German culture taught me how to teach my children resilience. I would go to the market, and there would be children on their bicycles buying the bread and everything else for their families. They weren't sort of walked with anybody. Even in Japan, at 6 years old, kids walk to school by themselves and all of that. And I think that in some Western cultures, we tend to mollycoddle our kids just a little much. Now, we don't have the opportunity that we can let our kids in every country walk to school by themselves. I know that. But, I used to, in Germany particularly, I'd stand outside the store. I'd give my 6-year-old a bag full of coins, and she would go in a different language, and I'd tell her what bread I wanted. And she would go in and she would figure it out. And she'd come out with a bag of gummy bears, and off we would go. And if you start them young and you just throw them into these situations, that they can build resilience, but you have to find the moments where they can, let them do things, and then find where their weaknesses are, and then push them into those uncomfortable situations. Because unless you're uncomfortable, you're not going to grow resilience. And unless you're uncomfortable, you're not going to grow. So, doing too much for your kids, not letting them don't order for them in a restaurant. Make them talk to adults. Make them advocate for themselves. All of these things are still building resilience. The child standing up and asking a question to an adult or any of that is very intimidating for a lot of people. And just throwing those things out so often that it just becomes normal. I think a lot of people forget that there's little moments in every day where you can build resilience very easily. There's 100 moments in a day. But often parents are in a hurry. They want to do it themselves. They want to get on with the day, and they forget, there's an opportunity here that is just so brilliant that I can make my child completely not even think that this is even an issue.
I totally agree. And because you say Germany, I grew up in Germany. I'm half German. And I can remember when I was a small child, I was barely tall enough to carry my big backpack that we had as kids. It was like a square, huge backpack that you had with all your books in there. I was barely capable of carrying that, and I had to walk to school. And the distance to school was about 2.5 kilometers, and we walked by ourselves. So yeah, resilience is really something that I've learned very young in Germany, and depending on the culture and the place where you grow up, that obviously hugely influences your resilience. And I yesterday had a podcast about success and a couple of secrets to success. And one important thing that you mentioned was doing the hard things and allowing your kids to be in situations like that. And I do believe that one of the key factors of success, and particularly in leadership, is to be willing and comfortable to do the hard things. Because when you look at really successful people, those are the people that are happy actually and embrace to deal with challenging situations and to come up with solutions for it. I think it's a huge driver for success in this world.
Absolutely, absolutely. But even in Germany, I mean, the kids, they down the ski slopes by themselves. You know, the parents are off and they're with a carer, and they do things by themselves. And I think we forget that nowadays, that they need to learn without parents always, hovering.
I agree. So as a military wife, you've been exposed to frequent moves in different cultures. Can you share more about your journey and how it has influenced you and your family particularly?
Yeah, I think it's made us very close. And I know a lot of military families feel the same. You only have each other. My children are very close in friendships and that. But I always like to make sure that we always take the positive from the moves. A lot of people are always like, oh, it's so hard. And I refuse to live that life. So we have adventures, and you can never unmake a friend. Those are our two mantras that we use all the time. And it is an adventure, and it does bond you and everything else. I think now that my children are teens, I can now see it gets harder to do that. But it's an adventurous life. And if you build curious, adventurous children, it doesn't really, it doesn't have to totally ruin the family or ruin the child. And some children take it harder than others, for sure. But it's how the parents spin things. I always say, what you sell, your child will buy. So if you're selling the negative, that's what they're buying. And if you're selling the positive, that's what they're buying. And you just have to be very mindful about how you sell every situation to your child. If you tell your child 5th grade's the hardest and this is the easiest, they're going to buy into that. So you have to be very careful as a parent to what are you saying and how are you selling the situation?
I really agree, because I think that how we grow up, the way that we are brought up, can also, or it will definitely enhance the limiting beliefs that we carry around in life later. And if we have our parents telling us consistently that something is extra hard and this one you have to take care of because this is so hard to do, and we create those fears, then those fears will settle into our children, and they will definitely already build limiting beliefs apart from the ones that they're going to pick up when they're in school, when they're influenced by other children, by other demographics and the people, cultural diversity. There's so many limiting beliefs that we pick up along our journey growing up. And if the parents have already instilled those base limiting beliefs, I do think that later in life it will be much more difficult and complicated to get over those. And I think those particularly are the ones that will hold our children back in their future life as adults. What do you think?
One of the things that I always teach, and at the beginning of all my courses and all my talks, the number one thing I talk about, and this is the question that I get asked all the time, is what is the thread in your research and your stories in your book? Because in my book, I have 110 lessons. What's the thread between them all? And the thread is parents that parent with the end in mind are more successful. And by that, I mean parents who see their child as an adult, even when they're a toddler. How do they want that adult child to look? Because your toddler is a toddler for a very short time, and your little kid and your teen and your tween and all of that. But you have a relationship, and you are going to be an adult much longer than you're going to be a child. So when you have a child, what's your end goal? But the trick about that is, and here's where I work with parents a lot of the time, is you have to know your beliefs before you can get to what's your end goal with your child, because you have to know the why. Why do I feel like this? Why do I say this? What do I believe? What are my values? Because without knowing that, you cannot build a child. So parenting for me is 100% self-development. You cannot do this and raise a family without having self-development involved, because Otherwise, you're just going to, like you say, you're just going to carry those beliefs on from generation to generation and not even know why you have them. You don't know where they come from. They just are part of you. You're like, well, that's what I just believe. And I'm always like, why? Where did that belief come from?
I agree 100%. That's really, really true. And I think there's a big lesson to be learned here, because how many times do we recognize? I mean, I'm a total advocate for mindfulness and present moment awareness and understanding what is happening right now. I'm here. This is what I'm doing. Be present. Put your phone away. Have that conversation with your friend that you haven't seen for so long. But I see, and particularly in today's society with cell phones and with iPads and all the entertainment that we have at the tip of our hand, that people are purely on autopilot. And if you think about it for generations to come, if we are trained by society to really navigate the world almost 80% of the day on autopilot, now we pass that on to our children. Now our children are flying on autopilot through life. I mean, we're setting our society, our culture, our kids up for failure with that. And that's why I firmly believe that in terms to have good development and growth, that it's so important that the parents, as you say, work on themselves and understand that they have to switch that autopilot off and create humans that actually understand what is happening around them.
Yeah. One of the things I teach, and one of my favorite things is to remember how it felt to be a child, because I think it's a tool that everybody has. And what happens is parents, they get so into this adulting world that they forget how it feels to be a child. And the other way as well is the child can heal a lot in a parent at the same time. So if you have a lot of child trauma still in you that you're passing on to your child it can work two ways, that you can help them and they can help you. So if you always remember how, if I said to you now, how does it feel to be a fireman, and you've never been a fireman, you'll be like, I don't know. And if I said to you, well, how does it feel to be an astronaut? Well, you don't know because, maybe you've never been an astronaut, but you know how it is to be a 6-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old at all times. And I think a lot of the times parents forget how the little people see the world. And if they can just go into the moment and just go, oh my gosh, this is how it feels to be curious, because children are natural scientists. As Neil deGrasse Tyson says he's not worried about science with children. He's worried about science with adults, because children are natural scientists. Every rock they pick up. But the parents are the ones who go, don't get dirty. Don't miss your shoes. Don't pick that rock up. Don't break that egg. Stop banging those pots and pans. You're making a noise. And slowly killing that curiosity in the children all the time. So I always say it's not the children, it's the adults that need training a lot of the time. So when you are on autopilot and you're always just telling your children, no, stop doing this, I want the house clean and all of this, you've really got to remember how it feels to be a child, and then go down that rabbit hole with them and explore the world again as a child. Go and lift the rock and see what's under it. See it through your child's eyes. Go back to that 6-year-old enjoyment of the world and go, what's under this rock? Oh my gosh, let's research. Let's see it tomorrow. And slowly you'll start having such joy. And then all of a sudden you're not on autopilot.
Yes.
All of a sudden you're living in the real world. You're living in the moment. And all you have to do is just go down to your child's level and just see the world through their eyes and remember how it felt.
I agree. That sounds totally logical, because it is really like that. Because who teaches us how to be a parent? That's why we need people like you, and why we need more education for the parents, and why parents should always be seeking education in terms of how to be a parent and how not to forget those things, because we're literally just mimicking people around us. We mimic the environment that we live in, and we try to be parents just the way that they are. But what if the system is flawed? What if the data is contested? If we don't have proper research data and we just keep on mimicking, and we literally dumbing ourselves down because we become less and less of parents, because we're not going out there and looking for training and looking for people that can educate us how to be parents. So I think what you've been mentioning is really, really important.
A while ago I did a course, and in it I spoke about this. And I had a whole, group of people, and we would meet online. It was during the pandemic. We'd meet online, every couple days, and I'd bring a new concept to them, and they had to go and experiment with it. And I brought up this. I said, okay, now I just want you to see how it feels to be a child. And we spoke about, even Mr. Robinson, who's big in America, he even says that this is such a tool that we have at our fingertips. And I had a parent who was very A-type, liked her order, liked her structure, didn't like the kids to make a mess. And she was always saying, I just can't relax. I just can't relax. Anyway, the one day she came back the next day after we were talking about this, and she said, I had such a great moment. She said she had just finished the dishes at bedtime. She was racing the kids off to bed, as she did every night. And her 10-year-old came up to her and said, Mom, can I open the dishwasher? And she was like, no. And she just stopped, because she said no was always her first thing. And she said, yes, you can open the dishwasher. And he thought the dishwasher filled all the way to the top with water. And he thought that as he opened it, all the water would come out. And he was confused. He was like, Mom, I don't understand how this dishwasher works. So they got on their hands and knees. They pulled out all the trays, and they looked at the heating element where the water came in. They started Googling it. And she said they sat there for an hour. She said it was the best moment of her week, because the next week they were looking at how the microwave worked and the fridge and the washing machine. And she said all of a sudden he just got into this world of engineering and science and everything else. And she went with him, all because she just went, yes, let's go down this rabbit hole together.
Yes.
And I think those are the moments that we miss every day, just those moments. There's 10, 20 moments a day that happen just like that parents go, no, and they shut down something that could be A, amazing for them, and B, really educational for their child. Their child might be developing an engineering mind, and you're just cutting that off.
Yes. And I'm going to go back to the next question just now, but I do want to add there, and it's particularly when we grow up then in our relationships, when are we actually ready to receive? When your partner comes to you and wants to talk to you, we always have to be aware, is the other person actually ready to receive? And the situation that you're painting right now is just like, and that's the beauty about kids, they're always ready to receive. Yes, they have their mood swings and everything, but they're always curious. They always want to see things which in return can inspire us also to be more curious and be knowledgeable and not just focus on the areas that we are in because we are an electrician and that's all that we know for our life. And then we come home, we watch soccer, and there's no more interaction, there's no more curiosity. And after 50 years of life, we recognize that all that we've done in our life was being an electrician, paying the bills, raising 2 kids. And I think what you're saying there is a really, really important thing for the development of children. Mm-hmm. So the next question that I want to ask you is, share with us some of your favorite parenting strategies.
My favorite. This one is probably my favorite because it's actually the one that started me off on the whole journey that I went on. And I met a woman when I lived in the UK. She was my landlord, and we lived on a dairy farm in the middle of the Cotswolds, and it was like a mini Downton Abbey, you could almost imagine it, with all the barns, and they made all the barns into beautiful homes, and we stayed in the barn. And every Sunday, the farmer's wife would invite everybody for a Sunday roast. And it was this long table in the middle of this hall. It was just amazing. But what made me more interested was her relationship with her adult children, because they would also come. And my children were 3 and 5 at the time. And the relationship that she had with her adult children was something I'd never seen or felt before. So I decided to interview her and ask her how she did it. And she was also a magistrate, and she told me, she said, and I feel like this should be shared with every parent in the world, whether you have a 5-year-old or whether you have a 21-year-old, that she said that what she did was she always vowed to herself that she would never lecture, only tell them a story. So, for example, she was a magistrate, so she would come home from court on a night, and they would be sitting at dinner. And let's say it was at the phase where you needed to talk about, drugs are going to be sold at school. She didn't want them to take drugs. So instead of going, you shouldn't do drugs. Drugs will kill you. Stupid people take drugs. Instead of doing that and lecturing, because if you lecture, kids are finding the first exit. How am I getting out of this situation? Where's the exit? How long is this going to go on? They haven't heard a word. So she said she never lectured. So she would say at the table, oh, something happened at court today. And the kids would be like, what? And she'd be like, oh, you know what? It's inappropriate. I shouldn't talk about it. And they would all be like, what, Mom? All of their eyes on her. And she would say, well, this 15-year-old came in. He had just been caught selling drugs at school. And she would just go into the whole thing. Well, they would ask her the questions. They would go, what kind of drugs? How much did they sell them for? How did they sell them? How did they this? And she then told them the consequences of him getting caught and what happened to him afterwards. And she said in that moment, there was a connection being formed of a communication. They were asking her questions. She was opening up to tell them honestly whatever they asked. And then they would walk away with all the information that she needed, all because she just told them a story. So I've used this all the time, and I share this so much. You know, if you're teaching children anything, if you don't want them to do underage drinking, find a story that is going to teach them. So instead of saying you shouldn't underage drink at a party, I said to my daughter, did you hear about this, a friend of ours' daughter who got a full ride scholarship to nursing school, went to a party, she was underage, the police raided, she was caught drinking, and her scholarship got revoked. In that moment, there was no lecturing. All I did was tell her a story. She's going to remember a story because human beings remember stories better than they remember lectures. And she also heard the consequences. My work was done. I didn't have to go into lecture mode. And this can be used for every single thing that you want to share with your kids. And what my landlord told me was it worked so well that even her friends would come to her instead of going to their own parents because she had a story. She became a story collector. And she had a story for each lesson that she needed to tell them that would build them as, you know, good adults.
Yes.
So that is probably my number one thing that I share is stop lecturing and find a story to tell. You can tell it from the news. You can tell a story from your own life. You can tell a story from something that happened when you were a kid, but do not lecture. Only tell a story.
Yes, that's very powerful. And in terms of the different countries that you've traveled, did you pick up different strategies? Were there different strategies that you found more suitable for certain places? What was your experience?
Every place had something incredible. And that's why I felt like I had to share. You know, in Germany, I couldn't believe how well the children were behaved compared to the children that I was hanging out with, say, let's previously in a country before, where we would be in an environment and all the kids would be screaming and shouting and jumping on tables. But when I went to Germany, I would go to, we'd be invited to concerts, like let's say in a big church, and all the kids would be sitting quietly, and that was that. So we were friends with our Burgermeister and his wife. And I asked her one day, I said to her, how are German children so well behaved and then afterwards having such fun? She said, we set conditions before they arrive. She said before they arrive, they know that this time you're going to sit still because afterwards you're going to have playtime. And it wasn't just this whole day for the kids. They would set in the morning, we're going to do this, then we're going to go here, and this is how we need you to behave because playtime's at the end. So the kids knew, oh, playtime's coming. So that really worked with younger kids and just kept them under control. But that was huge, especially for me with little ones. I used that for years. Always gave them their expectations and how I expected them to act and what was coming next. Because if you go back and remember how it felt to be a child, do you remember how long a day was as a kid?
Yes.
It was so long.
So long.
So it was such a long thing. So if they didn't know when the day was going to end, they just go crazy because they don't know what's coming next. So that was something I learned there for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just give them something also to look forward to and know that if I sit through this now, then there will be a reward at the end of the day. So I think that's also maybe.
And something else is coming, and then the day will end.
Yes.
You know, so they know where they are in the day.
Yes. And how have you seen the pandemic most affecting parents, kids, and families?
Well, I feel like it brought out a lot of good and bad. I think that a lot of parents maybe saw that there were things in their children they might have missed because they were so busy. And then they came to me and they were like, oh, I've noticed my child's like this, but because they had the time to spend with them, they got to see what the child needed more, and give that time to that child a little bit more. I think it did, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, brought a lot of parents closer to their families. But, especially in those lockdown times, they had to sort of get creative. Mm-hmm. Where before we didn't have to get creative with our families. We could kick them out to the neighbors' kids, or we could send them away or do something if we needed a break. But all of a sudden we were like, we didn't have that option.
Yes.
So it was, I think it made parents maybe a little bit more creative, and also just made them see, what my child needs a little more than I realized before.
Yes. And in terms of your strategies and the things that you picked up in different countries all around the world, was there anything that you learned that seemed counterintuitive or surprising to you?
Yes, again in Germany. I don't know why I'm talking about Germany so much. I think you're bringing it all out now. But yeah, actually, what sounded, when I moved to Germany, I really thought that I had to be everything to my children. I had to be the morning, the sun, the moon, the night, be there all the time. And I remember going out one night for dinner and taking my kids, and the hostess at the restaurant looking at me and going, "You brought your kids?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, what else am I to do?" And they're like, "They should be home." And, if you go to Oktoberfest, the day is for the kids and the fun. And at 5:00, the kids leave. And I really realized that they have the perfect mix of life, because, everything's shut down on, 1:00 on a Saturday, and everything's closed on a Sunday. And, but that's family time. That's designated family time. But then in the evenings, the parents go out and they're given an opportunity to go out and have time with your partner and invest in your relationship, or go and have friends and go out as an adult. And the children stay at home. You get a sitter, or the grandparents look after them. But the children were never out past 5, ever. But all the adults were. And it was such a nice distinction between family time and adult time. And I find other cultures get really mixed up on this. They feel like once you have a child, that's it. Your only family time. And I really got such a gift given to me, because I was able to then see, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to feel guilty about, wanting to go out and be an adult for the evening, because it would be weird if I went out with my kids there. So it was such a nice gift, and it was something I didn't expect to get.
Yes.
That I could invest in my relationships, with a friend or partner.
Yes, and if you think about it, how powerful that is, because if you grow up and you have children growing up over 10 years, 15 years before they become teenagers, and you literally have your relationship diminishing because of the impact that the kids have on you. So what are you going to teach them along the way? You're going to teach them that whilst we grow up and have a family, we have a family, and then the family is going to destroy the family, or what you're going to teach them. I think it's so important what you're saying there, because we shouldn't lose who we are as a couple or as a married couple just because we have children. And I think that happens very often along the way. And that's why very often we have divorce, and why we have relationships that don't work out. And we have single parents all over the world, because we have children, and then our relationship with our partner diminishes. And as you said, there is no need for that to happen if you really pay attention and you look what is happening around you.
Yeah, and if you designate time for it without any guilt.
Yes.
I think the guilt-free is also important.
Yes, guilt-free. I think that's really, that settles in, because I can remember that. I mean, I have 2 kids of my own, and I can remember when they grew up, how you felt. If you were not home and you did something, it really was like that feeling of, oh my goodness, what am I doing? I'm leaving my kids alone. But particularly in Germany, there was that culture that we would give them to grandmother or to other family members, and they would look after them. And it would be normal for us to then go out by ourselves, because, as you said, to be in a restaurant in the evening at like 7:00 and having your kids with you, unheard of in Germany. And here sometimes I
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, crazy. I mean, I see in South Africa sometimes I've been to restaurants where I did photography and there was kids there at 10 o'clock at night, which is incredible.
Yeah, I remember one German woman yelling at me and saying to me, "Why is your kids not in bed?"
Yes.
And I was like, "Well, where else are they meant to be?" And she's like, "In bed." And I just feel like this is how, I mean, culture can teach you so many different lessons, but unless you hear about it, you don't know.
Yes.
You don't know what you don't know. So, that's why I feel like sharing all this stuff is so easy. Nothing I share is hard. Nothing. Everything is so easy.
Yes.
Nothing takes even a little bit of effort. But sometimes you just need to hear a different way of doing it, because the way your mom does it, or your mother-in-law or your sister or your neighbor tells you to do it, it isn't the only way. There's another way. And going out and having adult time guilt-free is another way.
I agree.
That's all.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So, positive parenting, what is it and why is it so useful?
Positive parenting, like we spoke at the beginning, it's putting your kids in situations that's going to have a long-term benefit. It doesn't mean that you're all fluffy and, you think that your children are the best things on the planet, and you have these rose-tinted glasses and it's just all, kumbaya together. It really is about positive parenting, is putting your kids in situations that will create positive outcomes for the future. So, those resilient things that we're talking about as well, that is positive parenting, because that is going to have a positive outcome in the future. So whenever I talk about positive parenting, yes, I don't mean, be horrible to your children. That's also, positive to be, have a nice environment. But, your role as a parent is to raise a good adult.
Yes.
And even if that's not so comfortable, that's okay too.
Yes.
One of my chapters in my book is called "Don't Raise an Asshole," and I really, and it's about, it's about calling your child out before they become assholes. That's the parent's role.
Yes.
And I always say an adult asshole was once a child whose mother never called him out.
Yes.
So, you have to, that's positive parenting, is putting them back, in their place.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And do you have any examples or aha moments that parents who have worked with you have had?
Yeah. Actually had one the other day. It was really so special. I was talking to a group of parents in a course that I was doing. And I always talk about, and I won't go into the details of it now because it takes too long, but basically to tell your children their birth story, how they came to be. And, here in Hawaii, they have a saying, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know if you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going?
Yes.
And it's just about, children only have memories from 5. And there's a whole life that they don't ever know. So it's up to the parents to fill in the gaps. It's very connecting. It's very bonding. It's very warm. It's fuzzy. It's nothing but goodness. But I had a mom the other day, and she told me she had the worst pregnancy, the worst birth. She was in bed. She was bedridden the whole pregnancy, terrible birth time. The baby was in the NICU for months. Then coming home, the baby had a terrible coming home. And then there was just sickness and everything for this child the whole time. And she said, I don't want to tell her the story because I just don't even want to think about it. It's not something I even want to consider in my day. Anyway, we spoke at that, and she came up with the most beautiful idea. She said after our talk and that, her daughter came home and she was dealing with some mean girls at school. She was about 8 years old now. And she said, she told her story. And she said, I told her it as it was. I told her all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then I ended it. She ended it with, do you see how strong you are? Do you see what you've overcome just by being born? So no one can beat you down. It's impossible. These girls could never knock you down because look at you. Look at how amazing you are. Look how strong you are. And I think that was a huge thing for me because she took it to such a great place. So that was a huge positive outcome of a conversation that we were having. And that felt enormous to me because she was never going to tell her child the story. ever.
Yes.
And the fact that this little 8-year-old girl is going to walk tall every day for the rest of her life and go, nothing can knock me down. Do you know what I've been through?
Yes.
Before I even took my first breath, do you know what I've been through? Like, you are nothing. Like, you are nothing. And that is huge for me. That felt really, really like a huge thing for me to hear that.
Even for me now, as you say it, because you would never think of an example like that. It would never come to mind to say something like that to your child. But when you think about it, actually, birth is something that is actually hardcore. And if you think about it, that you made it through that, whether it's the mom that was giving birth or the child that was just making its way into the world and hoping that everything goes all right, it's powerful. It's really a great story. Thank you.
Yeah, no. So that was really special. I felt like all of this had been for a reason for that little girl, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. And in terms of your book and the teachings that you share, why do you think that is so important for families today?
I think a lot of people actually. Someone that we both know was the one who started me talking about this. She once said to me, I don't know why people want kids. All they do is complain about having them. And that stayed with me so deeply, because I realized she was right. And I was falling into the same trap of complaining about being a parent all the time. And I think a lot of the times parents, we get into this rut of, we think that this is going to be our life forever, and it's not. It's a slice of the pie. And, you know, my book is a positive book. It tells positive stories from positive areas, positive people, and it's to find joy again in those small moments, those, you know, and there's 110 lessons from 11 countries in the book. And every single one of them will bring joy in your life if it resonates with you and you want to use that idea. It will bring joy. It will bring nothing but joy. And I feel like, or not even, maybe joy is too strong a word. It'll bring contentment and happiness in a home where sometimes we get so bogged down with life and we can't see anything. You know, I always say, if you and I were to start a business right now and we would get everyone together who was going to open the business, we would have a great idea. We would have a vision statement. We would have a mission statement. We would have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. We would bring in the finance department, the planning department. We would plan it so well. But when people have children, they're like, nah, I'll just wing it. And it is a 20-year project, you know, and they get so into this ticking day to day that they don't actually see that there are ways that you can make this an enjoyable 20 years of your life. It doesn't have to be heavy and hard. It can be joyful. You can enjoy it.
Yes. I think that's really, and I spoke about it yesterday on the podcast about exactly that, because people do not plan. They don't even plan their days. They don't even really spend time on identifying what is happening today just in the next 12 hours. What am I going to do? And we go back to the autopilot, you know. So I mentioned in my podcast yesterday, premeditating and understanding this is going to happen. This is the stressful situations that I'm going to be dealing with during the day. I'm going to go to the gym. There's going to be that one annoying guy that makes so much noise. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to have that discussion with that coworker that I unfortunately don't get along with. But by preparing and having that in mind and being mindful about it, we can actually prepare for the day, and we can prepare our strategies, how to get to the parts that we don't really enjoy and how to have even more joy in the times or those moments during the day that are enjoyable. And if we do the same thing with our kids and we plan ahead and we know we got kind of a plan in our pocket to move forward, wouldn't that make parenting so much easier if we know at least we got a whole box full of tools and solutions already available when crisis strikes? But the problem is that we always run into those situations and then we are reactive. We don't have our calm, we don't have our composure. And when we are not calm and not composed, then we most of the time, unfortunately, don't respond to difficult situations in the right way. And I think that applies very much for parenting as well.
Yeah, I had a friend, she was a doctor she's from Harvard. So she was really such a together woman, and she had 3 kids. And I asked her how she brought her children up, as well as I do. And she said one of the things that she really loved to teach her children, because she was such a busy woman. She had 3 kids. She was, ran this huge practice. She was doing all this stuff. And she said she always told her children from a young age, how are we going to help our future selves tomorrow or next week or next year? So she always brought this concept of how can you help your future self? And that is a really easy thing to teach an adult even. How are you helping your future self for tomorrow? Because your future self is either going to wake up calm and have your stuff laid out for the day, or your future self is going to be running around late, panicked, day ruined. Which future self do you want to see happening tomorrow? So I think that's a really big one, because especially children, they can visualize that as well. But definitely for adults, I mean, we all need that sometimes.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I agree. The planning ahead and knowing what is coming. Yeah. I want to throw some of my questions that I prepared for you in between. And one that I'm really interested in to hear from you is, how do you recommend parents navigate cultural differences when raising their children in foreign countries? That was something that I really was interested to hear something from you about.
I think that if you all just go into the culture and enjoy it and study it together, I think it just comes naturally. And learn, and then let the families, this happened. I live in Hawaii now, and it is such a different place to be. It's culturally, it's so different. And my kids go to a local school, and they'll come home and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you won't believe how they do this here. Or I have to learn a song in Hawaiian for my graduation because we sing, songs in the Hawaiian language. And everything is so different that I think that it's letting them see that curiosity of how other people do things is just a lovely way. And what can you learn from it? I know my children love this culture because they've really, enjoyed it. They've enjoyed the exploring of it. So it's just creating little explorers. And then there's things about every culture. Every culture has stuff you don't like. Every single one has something. There's no perfect country. I've never been to a perfect country yet.
Yes.
Every country has stuff that I'm so sad to leave, and every place has something that I'm really happy to leave. So I've never found the perfect place yet. But just looking around and seeing what that is. And if you like it, then bring it into your life and into your family and into your, it'll just make you better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I heard you speak to parents about the energy they bring in the home. Is the energy absorbed by their kids and families? Can you explain more about that concept?
Yeah, so I always say the parents are the thermostats in the home. So if you walk in and you're fired hot and you've had a bad day and you're like, the kids are going to completely feed off that energy. They feed off every bit of energy the parents have. So if you come in, and I often say to my parents, just try it. Come in like Disney mom and dad and see what happens in the home. And then the next day, come in super chill and then see what happens in the home. And the next day, come in as mad as you can and see what happens then. And what happens is the children love the positivity. Obviously, everybody would love that. But when they come in angry, which a lot of parents do, they come in, they've had a bad day, they got cut off in traffic, they're late, there's something bad in the day that they're carrying over. The children will automatically assume that it's their fault that the parents are upset. And that's the point you don't want to get to. So I often teach ways that you can overcome that. So if you come home and you've had a rough day, because you're human and you can't come home every day happy, because that's not always available to everybody. Days are going to get to you sometime, and that is always tell your kids, it's not you. This is what happened. But tell me about your day, and I hope it was better than mine, because automatically you've cut that cord. They're not blaming themselves. That a lot of parents don't want to share about their day for some reason, or they don't want to tell what's going on. And even if you don't want to tell what's going on, you can just be like, hey, I'm in a funk because of my day. I don't even want to go into it. But how was yours?
Yes.
This isn't about you. And I think that really just makes kids a little bit more secure in their home. It's all about making this place a secure place. So just knowing you're the thermostat, whether you run hot or cold, you've got to find that right balance sometimes too. And if you can't, you need to explain to your kids why they can't get that balance that day.
Absolutely. And I can remember that when I was a child, how many times I came home, and particularly with my mom, we had a bit of a difficult upbringing. And I can remember the first thing that you think when you come home as a child and the energy is off and things are going mad is that it's your fault. And I think that's really very often, we got that typical question that kids ask, Mom, do you not love me anymore? And or Dad, do you not love me anymore? And I think that comes from there. And I think the takeaway there is that we have to be so mindful about the energy that we carry with us, because we way too often think that kids don't pick it up, and kids are masters of picking up the energy and the vibe. And we can pretend as much as we want. We will never be able to fool a child when it comes to the energy that we carry with us.
No, they energy readers, they definitely are.
Yes. You often speak about parenting with the end in mind, and you mentioned that briefly in the beginning. What do you mean exactly by that?
It's that whole thing about, what do you and your partner want that child to be? And I always talk about values. If I said to you, what are your values? Very few people can just spit their values out. So, with parents, I often have parents, we don't parent on the same page, or I parent different to my partner or my spouse. And it's all about, what are your values? I actually run these workshops where we explore what the values are, because my values may be different to my partner's values. It's funny because when you run this, I give them all these values and I say, without talking to your partner, what are your values? And they go through and they check them and like, oh, definitely this word. Well, they're completely different to the person next to them. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, of course you're not parenting on the same page. You're not parenting in the end in mind, because your maps look completely different. So the one thing we do is we always make the values the exact same. What are the common ones? And then you parent with those values in mind. So, for example, our families, I'll just use ours because it's easier for me to explain, are kind, strong, and smart. So every single lesson that I have to teach goes through the funnel of kind, strong, or smart. So kind is strong in you're kind to yourself. You don't speak badly about yourself. You're kind to others, and you're kind to the environment. That's ours. Strong is strong in mind, body, and spirit. And smart is book smart, street smart, and making good choices. So if I have a lesson to teach, I funnel it through one of those things. So let's say my son is mean to someone. I'm like, that was not kind. We are not unkind to others. Or if your kid made a bad choice, be like, that was not smart. Part of what we do is we make good choices. So you bring the values in, and then you're always parenting on the same page. Always. Yes. So that with parenting with the end in mind, what values you want those children to leave the home with. And ours are kind, strong, and smart. I want them to have those three values. So does my husband. And when they leave the home one day and they go out in the world, that's what they would have been raised as. So, it's having that planning and that forethinking of, what do we actually want them to take from us? Yes. As a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. And when, particularly in my coaching practice, I very often recognize how people don't know what their values are. They don't really know what they want. They don't know who they are as a couple, who they are as a married couple. What is their vision statement, or what are their together goals that they have? And if we don't sit down and define what we want in life and what our core values are and what we want to teach our kids, how would we know? Then we really just, again, going back to the whole autopilot thing, where we're just running through life and we're just giving them what we're giving them in the flyby. So I think what you're saying is so important to, and I like the concept of that you've been sharing, how you do it in your family. That sounds very powerful. And it gives you at least a toolkit and strategies to attack different situations, but always with the same kind of alignment. And I think alignment is something that is so important later in leadership, in business, but as a person in general. If your alignment is off, if you're not aligned with your core values and the principles that you want to stand by, then you're really just running into the dark forest and hoping that you're going to get out at the other side.
Yeah, and also, often if you know that your partner and you are going to the same destination, how you get there doesn't matter anymore.
Yes.
So you can start laying with your partner for being not parenting like you, because they're on a different route, but they're going to the same destination.
Absolutely.
So it makes it a little easier for everybody.
Yeah, I agree totally. And what do you think? How can parents help their children develop a strong sense of empathy and compassion?
Oh, I think that communication in the home will always take care of that.
Yes.
And that. And I think that a lot of what I teach is foundations, communication, and connection. And I think that with all those things, that those lessons are in there anyway. Because if you're compassionate to your family, you just start there. Like I have a rule: my children have never been allowed to fight, not once. They've never had a fight. I will not allow it, because that's where I think it starts. And often I hear people go, "I've heard it all." That's where children are supposed to learn to fight, and that may be true for you. I don't like to tell parents how to parent. What resonates with one certainly doesn't resonate with another. But I think the bigger picture, if you look at the parenting with the end in mind, the world is going to beat you up, and the world is going to hit you over the head with a stick, and the world is going to be mean to you. Imagine just having one relationship that you've had your whole life where that person isn't mean to you, and they're kind to you, and they don't argue with you, and so I think parenting with the end in mind comes in here again of, treat each other with respect, because you've got to have a safe place where you can come and you don't feel like you're going to get beaten up or, I think with siblings as well, it's very hard not to have competition sometimes, and to acknowledge that one sibling is going to be better than the other and being excited for them and seeing that everyone has different talents. And that's such a great way to teach compassion and acceptance of everybody as well. So it's everywhere. It's completely everywhere around us. But I do believe that it starts in the home of how you speak to your partner, how you speak to your children, how, once again, we're back to the beginning.
Absolutely.
It's self-development for parents.
Yes.
Because you can't teach from a place that you haven't healed.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah.
I agree 100%. The self-work, and that's a continuous process. You have to do that all the time. You must never forget your own education and moving on as a human and growing every single day, and particularly when you have children, because that's the only thing that you can pass down to them. That you improve yourself over and over again. And I think once they start seeing that you have that attitude and that you always try to grow from whatever is happening, they will go the same route. And that's the only thing that you can do as a parent.
Absolutely. I mean, I know a while ago I got really upset about something. I didn't get something that I really wanted, and I was so upset. And I went in my room and I was sulked, and I was so upset about it. And my son came in, and I think he was 13 at the time, and he sat down and he lectured me. He gave me like a real good moral talk about, how basically he spoke to me like I speak to him, how, you just need to keep moving forward, and you need to, all of this. And I thought, oh my gosh, if you already been able to think like this, as a child age, it's really an amazing thing to see them also taking the self-development that you're going through.
Yes.
And learning it for themselves. That's why I say, tell them if you're disappointed, tell them if you're in a funk, because they'll show up. Because if you've been teaching them about self-development, or they've been watching you do it, or they've been learning from you, it's amazing how it'll come full circle, and they'll be like, oh, this is what we do because this is how we live. We always assessing ourselves, checking where we're at, all of that. So
yes.
That's a
yeah, and while it's talking about communication as well, there's one point that I'm really interested in. How do you suggest parents approach conversations with their children about difficult topics such as race, politics, or religion? And that obviously applies very much when you travel around and you change location and different, cultural diversity. How do you address that with your children best?
Again, it's just we accept everybody. We don't, I enjoy every culture. I enjoy everybody. I'll never forget once my children were little and we were out at a restaurant and there was a family, and the mom had, my son said, "Mom, why does that family, the mom have pink skin and the dad have brown skin?" And I said to them, "Oh, that's because the mom's ancestors come from the northern part of the world and the dad's ancestors come from the southern part of the world." And he said, "Oh, is that the difference?" And I said, "Yep." And the next week he came home from kindergarten and he said, "Oh, Mom, I made a friend. His parents came from the south, the south part of the world." And that's how he, for years, he talked about where their ancestors came from. They come from the north, and that was the only difference for him of that. So I think it's just when they ask the questions, answer the questions.
Mm.
And again, how your beliefs will come through every time. Every time, whatever you believe will become your kids' beliefs. So what you sell, your children will buy. And, you've just got to make sure that you're in check all the time with what you sell them.
So I guess it all comes down again to mindfulness and to be aware of what our values and belief systems are so that we can pass down healthy ones to our children. It's all about mindfulness again. As we like to say, what you put in is what you're going to get out. What advice do you have for parents? And I think that's a really important one, that struggle to connect with their teenagers, because I really believe that the connection with your teenagers, that is something sometimes that really gets lost along the way. So what advice do you have there?
If you just do the whole not lecturing thing, they will connect with you. And you're creating a space where the communication is so, it goes back and forth. That they don't like to be lectured to. They really don't. And every time you lecture to them, you shut them down.
Yes.
I had a client once. He was telling me he was caught behind his house kissing his girlfriend when he was 14, and his mother came out and she started going, "You're going to ruin your life," and sent the girl home and screamed at him. And he said in that moment he made the decision to never discuss anything with his mother ever again. And they have no relationship. And I think that, had she handled it differently, it would have been a little bit of a different story. But he cut her out of his life. He was like, "I can't trust you. If that's how you're going to react to something completely natural for me, then I'm shutting you out." So I think, finding the stories, letting them see who you are as a human being, and seeing them as a human being, and finding a story to put out whatever message you want to get out will only bring you ever closer. It's guaranteed to do it. It's such an easy, great tool.
Yes. That is so important what you're saying right there, because I think particularly in teenagehood, that's the time where we lose the connection very often to our kids, and where we have to really change the way that we look at them and the way that we communicate to them. Because if we don't let them in as young adults and we don't treat them as such, then obviously there will be a breakdown in communication, and it becomes so much more complex to understand teenagers. And there's so many phases that they go through. So it's really, really important to understand those things and really follow those principles that you teach. So if people like to connect to you and they want to dive deeper and work with you, what do you offer parents and what do they get from working with you? What do you offer that is different?
Oh, I have I'm completely different because I have a cultural story background, and no one does what I do. Most people who do parenting come from a different background, and I come from many backgrounds.
Yes.
So they get a lot more from me in terms of that. And I also believe that that I don't like to tell parents what to do. I like them to figure out what they want to do. So there's it's just one of those situations, and then I'll bring a perspective change. So I just change their perspectives with easy tools that take very little effort. Mm-hmm. And I think parents nowadays, they don't have time to read a book, and they don't have time to sit down and think about things. And if I can give them tools that take no energy and very little effort, why would you not want to hear that?
I agree, absolutely. And what's interesting, what do you have coming up now? Is there anything that you're preparing for, anything exciting that is coming up in the near future for you?
Yeah. I've just come back. I did a tour of North Carolina and Virginia, which is for me like a 14-hour flight. So it was a long way. Yes. So it was a big event. And I've got some things coming up with an organization in Hawaii, which I'm really excited about because I don't have to travel and fly. So I'm excited about that. And I've got I've just certified with the fire department and police to work with families. Because with first responders, there's such a stress, in the home and that. So yeah, just stuff going on all the time. Always something. That
is so exciting. And tell me, Jo, if someone wanted to contact you and learn more, how can they reach you?
I'm really easy to get hold of. On my website is probably the best because that is where everything's sort of housed. So it's got all my socials. I put a lot of free content out on my socials.
Yes.
And it also has my email and it's got a message thing there. So joanneholbrook.com is where you go, and you'll get every single thing you need there.
I think that everyone should actually get hold of you because it's so interesting. And your passport to parenting, just that title alone, it says travel, it says journey, it says getting around, it says be adventurous, it says let's travel all the places in the world and see how everything works so that we can use it and actually make our family better. It's so inspiring, actually.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, your passport to parenting teens will be coming out at some point too. So that'll be the next one.
Wow, that's interesting. And Passport for Teens, I think that will be a very, very special a book and manuscript because handling teenagers is definitely one of the most challenging things that we can even think of as parents.
The most challenging thing.
Joanne, thank you so much. That was amazing. It was really insightful and I enjoyed every minute of our interview. And thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing your stories with us and sharing your wisdom with us from your parenting experiences. And I wish you success for the events that are coming up. And I'm very excited and cannot wait for your passport for teenagers. And I'm sure when that one launches, we're going to see each other again on the Success Blueprint.
Hopefully. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And to our audience, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Success Blueprint with Joanne Holbrook from Hawaii. She's the author of Your Passport to Parenting. I will hear you guys again next week, Friday, for our next episode. This was the Success Blueprint, strategies for a life and business you love. Enjoy your weekend.